Shalom and welcome, everyone. My name is Rabbi Yonah Berman, and I'm the Mashgiach Ruchani and Director of Alumni Engagement at Yeshivat Chovevei Torah Rabbinical School.
And I'm Ruthie Simon, Executive Director.
It is a pleasure to have all of you with us tonight. People joining us literally from around the world. In fact, there are people for whom it is no longer tonight, but it is already tomorrow morning, Monday morning in Tokyo. And it is a pleasure to have people joining us from Tokyo to Tel Aviv, New York City to Los Angeles, and many, many points in between. A quick reminder that our program tonight includes live closed captioning and ASL interpretation. Those of you who'd like to take advantage of the closed captioning, please press the CC button at the bottom of your screens. And I'll point out that this is something that we have been doing throughout the last couple of years at YCT. All of our public programming online has included closed captioning and ASL interpretation as a way of bringing our Torah to the widest audience possible. This is something that we are very, very proud of. I'd like to take a moment as well to offer our tefillot, our prayers, to those in need tonight around the world. It's been a difficult week for various communities, just today in California, and over the past month in Ukraine, and of course over the past week in our beloved Medinat Yisrael. And we take a moment to pray for peace, for comfort, for those in trouble throughout the world and in those places in particular tonight. Special welcome to our supporters, those returning for your 20-something YCT celebration, and those for whom this is the first time that you are joining us. Those of you who are here to honor the work of our three amazing, specially celebrated honorees tonight, Musmachim, Rabbi Andrew, Rabbi Aaron, Rabbi John, those of you from their communities, their parents, as well as the parents of our current students and our alumni in many communities around the world. A special welcome to our current students. And speaking of around the world, I'll point out that our current students come from a variety of countries around the world, from New Zealand, from Israel, from
Canada,
where else?
France,
keep going.
Mexico, Spain,
the UK,
England.
Don't forget the UK, and of course the United States of America as well. HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. We read those words just yesterday as we talked about the beginning of the new biblical year, as we celebrated Rosh Chodesh Nisan. This is a month that will mark all of the months that will follow, that will begin this special new year, this special new time, this time of spring, this time of rebirth, this time of renewal. Tonight we have the opportunity to celebrate a YCT that is full of rebirth and renewal. A YCT which, like the Jewish people, is awakened, is full of love, is full of joy, is full of opportunity and potential, and we are realizing it. And we have the opportunity to celebrate three of our best, and we have a lot of best. Three rabbis who have gone to three different corners of the earth, including both sides of the United States, and as we've mentioned, both sides of the Pacific Ocean, to bring their Torah, their love for the Jewish people, and for the Jewish community, wherever they can do that best. We begin tonight by looking across that Pacific Ocean to Tokyo, where it is now Monday morning, and where our musbach, our alumnus, Rabbi Andrew Scheer, has taken the Jewish community of Japan to new heights, even as he joined the community in the midst of the COVID pandemic.
How would I describe Rabbi Andrew? I would describe Rabbi Andrew as an amazing, engaging, principled individual, but he's also a rabbi.
I'd graduated NYU, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, assumed I was going to be a lawyer. I was turned on to the idea of teaching English in Japan. I was living maybe 2 hours outside of Tokyo. I felt like I should be more connected to the Jewish community. I spoke with one of my dad's patients who said, Rabbi Avi Weiss is doing something special in Riverdale. 5 seconds, 10 seconds of meeting Rabbi Weiss, I knew that Chovevei Torah was the yeshiva for me.
There's a common denominator in everything that Andrew is about. Every place where he has gone, these are places where people are vulnerable.
While I was in yeshiva, I got to serve in the United States Army Reserve. My first job straight out of Chovevei was working as a chaplain on Rikers Island. A couple of my friends from Tokyo gave me a call, and they said, our rabbi is leaving. Would you and Tali be interested in moving to Tokyo? Tali was pregnant. We had a million reasons not to move to Japan. I thought about what Rabbi Weiss told us, all of us, that when there's a Jew who's in need anywhere in the world, in Poland, in Argentina, even in Japan, you just go, and you go help that community.
We all agreed at the board level that it's really important to bring someone in who will connect with those current members and those prospective members who have very, very young families and children. Rabbi Andrew has really fit the bill there. Here in Japan, we run the gamut. We have members who are traditional Orthodox, as you would label, to those that are really on the other end of the spectrum. Rabbi Andrew coming has really brought a wonderful, inclusive spirit to our congregation. And it really is something very special.
He has just done unbelievable Avodat HaKodesh in Japan, in Tokyo.
What I've sought out, along with the board and the community as a whole, is to create exactly that, to create a place of Judaism, of Torah, but with multiple outlets, so that any Jewish person, that they still feel like they have a home. Another important part of being the rabbi in Japan is the next generation, Ledor Vador.
We have a very vibrant Sunday school, 50 or more children.
And it's growing every month. A chaplain's job, a rabbi's job is not to sit in an office all day. A rabbi's job, go where the soldiers are, go where the Jews are, you find them. So my day-to-day, every morning, is I try to find the Jews.
The community, in terms of its membership, has dwindled over the years. We have a new rabbi, and we want to get our membership up from the low 80s to 100. 2 years, we're now close to 97.
I think a lot of that just has to do with making it a warm and welcoming place, that they have a place in Tokyo that's theirs, and that I'm there for them.
Rabbi Joe Potasnik, he often places rabbis in VA hospitals and in these clergy positions in prisons. And he used to call me every few months and say, Avi, I need more Andrew Scheers.
Every day that I wake up and I'm in Japan and I'm the rabbi, I don't take it for granted that the reason why I'm able to be that rabbi is the training and the learning that I was able to accomplish at Chovevei Torah.
You know, Andrew, I remember when you were a student in the yeshiva and there was a devastating tornado in Birmingham, Alabama, and you went to help. And I have images in my head, the pictures that I saw, you were schlepping heavy branches and cleaning up the debris in people's yards. And I remember you talking to people and listening to their stories of loss. And that's you, Andrew, like you said. You go where you're needed, but that's not it. It's not easy. You go to the places that are not easy. And moving to Tokyo, across the world, away from your family, that is not easy. And Tali, you were pregnant, and you got on that plane, and you made it to Japan, and you're building the community all during COVID. Tali, thank you. This is your success too. And I have to say something. And Pam and Max, thank you for letting them go. Thank you for letting them go. I know it was terrible for you, but look at what they're doing there. Look at what they're doing there. I also want to thank the Tokyo Jewish community for embracing Andrew and Tali so warmly.
Thank you, Ruthie. We move now to another remarkable musmach who's had a particular influence on today's students with the knowledge and the understanding that he is impacting the leaders of tomorrow. The executive director of UCLA Hillel in Los Angeles, California, our friend, our musmach, Rabbi Aaron Lerner.
Aaron Lerner is an extraordinary leader. He's the executive director of a huge Hillel.
Rabbi Lerner is all about the students, all about making the experience for them here at UCLA Hillel as optimal as possible.
I love the sense that at the end of the day, I've made a difference, that the students' lives have been fundamentally changed by interacting with either me or with somebody that I've empowered. There's not hundreds of those stories, there's thousands of those stories over the course of my rabbinate. This is a second career for me. I come from business and finance, and when they hired me, I got the tagline, not from me, but from them, that I was a rabbi who could read a spreadsheet. I'm an executive director. I work with a board of 30 people. We run a 22,000 square foot building. It's an incredibly complex job, but the beauty of Chovevei is that it has provided at least some training, some touch point in each one of those different areas that continues to inform the way that I run Hillel today.
We know that YCT excels in pastoral training, The first skill that we teach our students is how to listen.
When you ask people, what would you actually like to do? And then you do that, it turns out that they show up.
He is good at assimilating all the information and then executing a decision.
I've accomplished that mostly by listening, right? And mostly by not trying to go in with my own agenda.
Rabbi Lerner, as rabbi, has created a space where UCLA Hillel puts tremendous emphasis on Torah study. If you get the email or the regular weekly update, 80 or 90% of the just ongoing programs have something to do with Torah. It could be Israel action, it could be learning Parsha, it could be thought of the week. But the idea that Torah is going to infuse everything we do here is an incredible thing. It's something that we're very blessed.
Everything else that can fill an executive director's day is all rooted on the fact that we have a rabbi who's doing it, and the mission is focused on the end goal.
Yeah, when I think about the work that we want to do or the impact that we want to achieve, I actually think about my graduates 5 and 10 years after school. So are they making Jewish choices? Is the work that we've done together informing their philanthropy? Maybe it actually informed what they do with their life at all.
This time of college is incredibly important for young Jews and their experience.
So the idea that we're constantly sort of changing the Jewish vector that somebody might be on is super exciting for me. In Hillel, when we're thinking about Israel, we're not necessarily thinking about, oh, if I could just tell you X, Y, or Z, then you would come to agree with my position. Telling people to believe something doesn't work. So we asked our students, what should we do? And students said, you know what, we should come up with our own educational mission to Israel.
It brings together student leaders, both Jewish and non-Jewish alike, to experience Israel together and to see firsthand what's happening in modern Israel.
Showing them, bringing them to Israel, having them experience a relationship with somebody who's actually Israeli. That's impactful.
It was a really successful trip in that those student leaders came back to campus with a more nuanced understanding of the situation.
We thought it would be a one-off trip, but the next year we were able to identify a funder who scaled that to 7 campuses in California. We then scaled the trip to 21 campuses around the country. That doubled to 40, and today there's 80 similar trips that are running. So if you take this one idea from 2015, there's now more than 1,000 people who are affected by this trip every single year. So the impact, as I see them 5, 10, 15 years down the line, is just undeniable.
What it means to YCT to place rabbis like Aaron Lerner in a position of such influence, it means that there's hope for the Jewish community.
There's something more that I need to share about Aaron's leadership. When he arrived at UCLA, he made it a priority to go and meet the administration and leadership of the university. And that was a very strategic move. I mean, it was natural for him, but that relationship continued over the years. And why is that important? Because recently there were some anti-Semitic incidents on campus, and Aaron has the ear of the administration, and was able to make sure that they responded in a timely and meaningful way. And when I was speaking to one of his students before this event, he shared with me, you know, that response really makes me feel safe and comforted and cared for. Aaron puts in many, many hours during the day, and I just want to thank Rachel and your kids for your patience and your love and your support. And I want to thank the UCLA Hillel Board for your incredible partnership and support.
We turn now to one more alumnus, serving a group that is hard to reach and more challenging to find. A lower priority perhaps in the Jewish communal conversation, even though it must not be. As a founder of the base movement, Rabbi John Leener created community and opportunities for engagement for the millennials. And if that wasn't enough of a challenge, he also took the responsibilities of a pulpit in Brooklyn, New York, serving a wider range of the community in incredible and holy ways.
I was not planning on being a rabbi. I graduated college with a film degree, and when I decided I wasn't going to be Steven Spielberg, my parents, they suggested going to Israel, I met my wife Faith there. Simultaneously, Rabbi Weiss came. We had breakfast, and he asked, what do you love more, the Jewish people or the Torah? Like question for a breakfast, right? And I said Jewish people, because that's really what drives me in my work. And he said, then you're going to be a great rabbi.
John exemplifies the beauty and value of steady, devoted work.
I just remember going to Faith and John's home for the first time. I felt inspired by the level of care, paying attention to all these details that make people feel at home. Is the lighting soft? Is the space ready for you? How do you feel when you walk in? What's the right way to share Torah with these exact people in this room? Is it through questions? Is it through storytelling? Is it through like a meaty text? His eye is always on the people in front of him and the people he's going to welcome.
The millennials, they're a misunderstood demographic. You know, you read all these articles, oh, they don't care about Israel, they're intermarrying at such rapid rates. That wasn't what I was seeing in reality. I was mostly seeing people who were seekers, wanting community, wanted learning. So BASE was really a response to what I saw.
And they have started the space movement, which has now been taken up in a lot of other cities, like Atlanta, Chicago, Boston, and it very much addresses what is out there for people after college.
I started a weekly Parsha class on Wednesday night. And that's really how we built the community, through learning, which I'm very proud of. I think a lot of programs geared for this demographic tend to water things down. We just went with learning Torah, and it worked. My job at the Prospect Heights Shul is supposed to be part-time, but there is no part-time rabbi job, which I've learned very quickly.
We didn't really have a shul home when COVID started. We didn't know where to put ourselves. How do you keep a community together through that much instability? That just takes a remarkable leader.
The mere act of meeting was important to send to the congregation of like, we're not leaving, we're gonna keep going.
Coming back to Shul after a very isolating period, I felt so grateful that my home existed. Rabbi John stayed. He stayed the whole time. He made the minions. He met other people who were staying, and he just kept building this community.
Chovevei prepared me in a lot of different ways to be an effective rabbi. Most importantly, it was to just be there.
And John is just a great example of somebody who takes that totally to heart and works with that all the time.
When he gives a Dvar Torah in Shul, my daughter Mia feels like he is speaking directly to her, and it's about her life and her experience, and that everyone feels that way.
I think it goes back to that breakfast conversation with Rav Avi, to be honest, and prioritizing the people.
I want to give a shout out to John and Faith, who are hosting a watch party in their home in Brooklyn. Hey guys. You know, John, one of your community members called you the Kevin Durant of rabbis. For those of you who don't know basketball, you probably know Michael Jordan. John is the Michael Jordan of rabbis. John, I remember you as a student. You were the first one in the Beit Midrash and the last one to leave. And you were here every day. I think we joked one time that you should get a perfect attendance award. And you were committed and you were devoted to your learning and you worked hard and you were incredibly passionate. And that is exactly how you lead. And the Prospect Heights Shul and the base community are incredibly lucky to have you, incredibly blessed to have you as their leader. And Faith, you're his partner in this vision. This success is also yours. This is a shared success. And Dina and Jerry, you guys told John to get on the plane and go to Israel. You set this all in motion. Mazel tov, this is amazing. And I want to say to everyone, all of us, we all share in the success of the impact that we're having on Klal Yisrael. And I want to thank you for your continued ambassadorship and talk about the yeshiva. If you encounter someone that could be a prospective student, please encourage them to be a rabbi. If you hear of job opportunities, please send them our way. And just thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking of thank yous, I have the privilege of thanking our incredible board led by Dr. Stephen Laufer.
And our faculty and staff who are so devoted and give so much heart and passion to the work we do here every day. And we feel it. And thank you. Thank you.
Let's also take a moment to acknowledge not just our amazing YCT students who are right here with us right now in this room, but those members of our Kollel, our Rikma fellows, now in their third cohort in Israel, our Beit Midrash and Smicha fellows. All of you are the reason that we are here today and that we do our work this and every single day. We have a very exciting second half of our program coming up in just 4 minutes. This is your opportunity to stay with us, enjoy some music, take a little stretch, dance along on your Zooms as we prepare for the second half of our program. The second half of our program will include an interview by Abigail Pogrebin of our Rosh HaYeshiva, Rabbi Dov Linzer, our president and Rosh HaYeshiva. I'm still getting used to that, Rabbi Dov Linzer. Abigail Pogrebin is the author of My Jewish Year, 18 Holidays, One Wandering Jew, which was a finalist for a National Jewish Book Award. She wrote a series for the Forward called Still Small Voice, interviewing 18 clergy and scholars about their own faith. And she and Rabbi Linzer co-hosted a podcast for Tablet Magazine called Parsha in Progress. A former producer for Mike Wallace at 60 Minutes, Abby moderates public interviews for the Stryker Center, the Shalom Hartman Institute, the Manhattan JCC, ADL, and UJA. She's a former president of Central Synagogue in Manhattan, a place that us YCT folks have gotten to know, especially with our Rikma fellows coming from Israel, as we regularly visit with and learn with her rabbi, Rabbi Angela Buchtal. She'll be interviewing, of course, our president and Rosh HaYeshiva, Rabbi Dov Linzer, our Norman and Tova Bulow chair. We've heard about stakeholders, we've heard about ambassadors. I will just say while we all know that Rabbi Linzer does a lot for the yeshiva, I don't think anyone, with the possible exception of Rabbi Nitzavor Zlatshauer and Ruthie Simon, I don't know if anyone knows the extent to which Rabbi Linzer and everything that Rabbi Linzer does for our yeshiva. The WhatsApp answers to our alumni, the constant answers to other people in the community, teaching Torah, traveling literally around the world in support of our yeshiva, working with donors, with alumni, with students, with every stakeholder that you can imagine. This is an opportunity for us to learn from two amazing people with their shared vision and sometimes their competing visions as we think about what it is that our Torah and that YCT's Torah is really about. So enjoy the next 4 minutes, take a little stretch, dance along with us. We'll see you back in just a few moments.
Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Hashem ki tov ki li olam chasdoi hoidu la Hashem ki tov ki li olam chasdoi hoidu la Hashem ki tov ki li olam chasdoi hoidu la Hashem ki tov ki li olam chasdoi Hashem, Apah Moideh Les Hashem, Apah Moideh Es Hashem, Kili Yoilam Liyolam Chazdoi. All it's over. Apah Moideh Es Hashem, Apah Moideh Es Hashem, Apah Moideh Es Hashem, Kili Yoilam Liyolam Chazdoi. Tidoi, la 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 la. Hashem, thank you, Hashem, thank you, Hashem, thank you, Hashem. Hoidu Hashem, hoidu Hashem, ki tov, ki li Hashem. Apam oihde es Hashem. Ki li oilam chasdoi. Apam oihde es Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Ki li oilam Hashem yitbarach, toda rabba lecha, Hashem yitbarach, toda rabba lecha, Hashem yitbarach. Thank you, Hashem. Oh, to Hashem, thank you, Hashem, toda rabba lecha. Thank you, Hashem, toda rabba lecha, Hashem yitbarach. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you,
Hello, Dove.
Hi,
Rabbi Linzer.
Good to be talking again.
And not arguing for a change.
We'll see about that.
I have to say, for everybody who's on Zoom, you're sort of missing the party in here. It was very much a party just now. And I say that because I was reminded over and over again as I prepared for this in my overly diligent type A way that there's so much joy at YCT. So I want to start with the joy, not just because we had this joyful song that everyone was dancing to here, but that's not necessarily always associated with an Orthodox seminary. So what is uniquely joyful about Chovevei?
Well, I really appreciate the question. And it reminds me 3 years ago when we were just starting and I was speaking to people about what you see as special about Chovevei and about our rabbis. And I remember a young person, a millennial, who said...
You're not gesturing at me.
No. He said, you know, when I go into other Orthodox synagogues, everything feels so heavy, feels so much a sense of burden. When I walk into a Chovevei shul, I feel light, I feel joy. And I think if I had to say what that's about, other than the enthusiasm of our rabbis and their passion, I would say that I think we see people where they are and we ask ourselves, what can we do to connect them to the tradition, to allow them to become more fully express their Jewish identity, to grow in their Judaism, as opposed to here's everything you have to be. You're very distant from that, and we're going to try to force you into that box. So I think
I just want to push you for a minute when you said we meet rabbis where they are, or whether we meet students, people where they are. Because I know what you're saying, but we hear that a lot. I'm sure a lot of organizations would characterize what they do similarly. So what is it that you're kind of allowing? Is it the individuality of someone coming, despite the fact that they have to learn an enormous amount that exists as a kind of fixed canon? So it's not like everybody's reinventing tradition here. So what does it really mean to meet someone where they are?
Well, I think you're referring to our students, and to the degree that it's about our students, I would say, as I think you heard, people come from such, wide range of different backgrounds. We've had people who have come after they were partners in law firms. We have people right out of college from all different places in the U.S., from some who grew up Orthodox, some who did not, places outside, Mexico, Spain. And we feel that everybody is bringing their unique background and identity and perspective and energy into the place. And that's what makes us so rich. And that's what, makes this school, not so many places, it's, I think, cookie cutter. It's like, the rabbi is the black hat and the white shirt and the tzitzis out, and everybody's got to look that way, and everybody's got to be produced in the same way. And here we embrace the diversity, and that's also what we see is so rich of what we put out.
There's been some pretty major kind of philosophical changes in the last couple of years, and I'd love to just talk about, first of all, what is expressed in the new logo, because I was lucky enough to be party to some of those conversations when you were mulling it with various committees. But I wish people could see the logo. I guess we can't put it up
was
now.
up before.
Okay. So what's the thinking behind it? I know it's not just cosmetic. It represents something that goes to the heart of Hovevei.
Yes. So as you said, it actually took a lot of time because we wanted something to speak to our essence. And to me, the question I ask is, what feeling does it leave me with when I see that? People have different interpretations what it means, but for me, it's a sense of energy, of vibrancy, of expansiveness, of a sense of interconnectedness, but also people going off and bringing their own selves to their various communities. And I think the reason it was so important, one thing to pay attention to is that it does not say the words rabbinical school on it. I don't know if you noticed. It says YCT and Vibrant Torah Leadership, because we have gone through over the last few years a new understanding of ourselves, a new vision, because we stepped back and when we saw the world changing and our mission had remained the same for 20 years to train Orthodox rabbis, but so much had changed, and had we really stepped back to revisit what our mission is and what we could be bringing to the world. And we realized that we had three core competencies, three things that were unique to us. And that one was training rabbis and understanding of a religious leader as somebody who is mission-driven, who's not just there to do certain rabbinic tasks, has a sense of what the community needs, what the world needs, and how I can make a change. The second is community that is, as we were talking about before, diverse, welcoming, everybody is seen, you see who's not there, everybody matters. And the third is a belief that Torah that is genuine and authentic and anchored in the past has to really speak to who we are today. And we realized that while the primary vehicle of bringing that to the world was rabbis, was training, 4-year training of rabbis, there were other ways we could bring that to the broader world without it being just about giving ordination.
Well, I want to zero in on community for a minute. You've talked to me a lot about inclusivity. How to make that very concrete? What is particularly inclusive about Hovevei?
Well, I would say in terms of the communities that we're out serving, first of all, we are not limiting ourselves to the Orthodox communities. About half of our guys serve in Orthodox communities, half of our rabbis serve in more general, what we call Klal Yisrael communities. And we take great pride in that. We think that that's an important mission for an Orthodox rabbi to do, or for anybody to do, is to serve broader Klal Yisrael. Within our communities, so many, again, I will say Orthodox communities, I think look pretty monochromatic. You have to come from a certain socioeconomic background, dress a certain way, rather than an embracing and a loving of the diversity. So I think one area in particular that has been the question about women and women's roles. Now Maharat is really taking the lead on that, has taken the lead on that for 12 years, but that's something that has been core in terms of our vision of community and equal participation of women, and concern about people with disabilities, something that's very close to my heart. And now also really trying to broaden what we can do to create welcoming communities for LGBTQ individuals.
And in terms of the LGBTQ community, you obviously went through a chapter that was very public and very difficult. And I wanted to just give you a chance to respond to how that sits with you now, maybe some of the lessons learned from that chapter.
Well, that was a difficult time, and it was unfortunate that I think other people were defining the narrative, and we did not want to adjudicate that in public and did not feel that was appropriate. But I will tell you what we stepped back and realized was that we could be doing a lot more, that we were in a position to, where our values were in terms of, I don't want to use the word inclusiveness. My wife, who you interviewed a little while ago, Rabbi Zlatchauer, who's the real wise one of the family.
I learned that.
She said, I hate the word inclusiveness because inclusive means that inclusion, that somebody is fundamentally on the outside and we're going to open up our space and bring the person in. And it's really about recognizing everybody as a full member, not excluding anyone. And I think that when it comes to the issue of LGBTQ, our values are that we want their full membership and presence in our communities. And we have so many rabbis out there, 150 rabbis in their various communities, and we're in a position to do a lot more to create welcoming communities.
But I want to give you also a chance, and you and I have talked about this a lot, of what happens when your progressive values come up against certain red lines in terms of your Jewish orientation, your orientation towards Torah, towards halacha. So how do you, for your students and for yourself and YCT's future, kind of chart that course?
Well, I think that most of the time, 95% of the time, or 95% of the work is at the community level, not at the halachic level. I'll talk about it in terms of disability, something that's very close to my heart. There are some halachic questions. Somebody is, let's say, in a wheelchair and they're a Kohen, can they do the Birchat Kohanim, the blessing of the Kohanim? There's a halachic question about that. And that has to be solved. And there are ways, and one of the core things that I devote myself to and that we devote is to find possibilities within halacha that have not been explored. So I think there are a lot fewer red lines than people imagine. But beyond that, there is so much at the community level which would radically make a difference in terms of people's sense of inclusion in the community that has nothing to do with halacha. I'll just give a personal example. My eyesight is not what it used to be. And a shul I go to that is generally very proactive about inclusion, there are no sidurim there with large print. I don't mean, that size print. So there's so many small and big ways that you can make everybody feel recognized and included and when halacha comes up, those have to be addressed.
And in terms of the signing and making sure that people feel wherever they are, that wasn't that a fairly new development? And can you just tell me how that came about?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is really a fascinating, or a little embarrassing, but a very important story, because for 10 years we had been doing training on disabilities in the yeshiva, devoting a full week every other year. And as I mentioned, it does relate to me and my family, something very close to my heart. And then when COVID just hit, we were doing a series of lectures called Change Makers, and I was supposed to speak on the issue of how halacha has treated people who are deaf. Which has changed radically once it realized that people who are deaf actually are intelligent. Anyway, so it was a week before the lecture, and we get an email, and the email says, I'd like to come to the lecture, I'm deaf, will there be closed captioning? And I wanted to bury my head in shame, because the answer was no, we hadn't thought about it. And it shows you what happens when you actually hold up a mirror to yourself. And I brought the team together and I said, this is a shanda. This is an embarrassment. And we have been talking about this. We have to start living up to our values. And from this point on, I don't care what it costs, every single public event we're doing is going to have closed captioning. It's not the end of the story. We started doing it, and then 3 events later, in one of those Hollywood Square Zoom boxes, somebody is doing ASL. And we don't know how that happened. So who is this person? So I called her up afterwards and I said, what's the story? Why were you doing ASL? She said, look, I really appreciate that you're doing closed captioning. Nobody does it. And it's a tremendous benefit for the deaf community, but it wasn't so good. So I was chatting with my friend and I just said, I'm just going to get up and do the ASL. So I realized this was a person who knew the field, and I was talking to her about resources and how she might direct me. And 10 minutes into the conversation, she said, you know what? I am so inspired by what you're doing. I'm just going to fund it all.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. So it is a great story. So we only have a few more minutes because I'm being kept on task by Ruthie and Yona. But I want to talk about Rikma for a minute because it's such a wonderful program. And as Yona mentioned, my rabbi has experienced it. What was the thinking behind it? How has it changed Chovevei or enriched it, would you say? Very practically.
Yeah, so this was a great example of how we can broaden our impact, because we realized we don't have to spend 4 years. I mean, we don't only have to spend 4 years training rabbis. We can take people who are rabbis in the field and give them the distilled essence of what we have to offer and radically change their path. So 3 years ago, the demand came from rabbis in Israel that they wanted the Chovevei training. So we provided them weekly training in Israel about, as I said, rabbinic identity, rabbi as religious leader, a broader vision of who you are and what you can do. A central part of pastoral counseling, which you've heard, 2 intensive weeks, which makes people a real presence, active listeners. and 2 weeks in the U.S. to broaden their sense of American Jewry, to meet all the denominations. They have always come and visited Rabbi Angela Buchdahl, other inspiring figures, to see the American model of the communal rabbinate. So this has made, just as one indication of how successful this has been, the first year we gave them stipends. The second year we cut the stipends in half. Now it's the third year we're charging them.
That's such a warm story.
Well, and there is a waiting list. And as soon as we ended the third cohort, 4 more people said, can we please join the next one?
And an example of the PAVA-supported innovation, can you give us just a few minutes, a few seconds on that?
Sure. I want to say that, I'm going to just go back for 1 second. I do have to say one thing about Rikma also.
I'm supposed to keep you on task.
I appreciate that. You're very good at that. But an exciting part about that is that we have also brought on Yeshivat Maharat, and this year we're training both men and women in rabbinic fields in Israel. So that's very exciting. There was a lot of thank yous before, some directed at me. And I want to take a moment because you mentioned the PAVAs and their funding. And before we get to the specific fellowship you're referring to, how grateful I am to our funders. And not only... And of course it is because of the financial support that makes it all possible and that gives everyone who supports the yeshiva a portion in all of the work that we do. But also because we have been blessed with funders who are real partners, who really work with us to think, what can we do and how can we do it better? And the PAVAs are amazing examples of people that I've just felt have partnered with us all along. And last year, I would take an opportunity to announce publicly that last year they gave us a gift of $1 million, which was an amazing gift. Yes, it was.
Wow.
I do have to say, as you know, that I'm new to this role as president, relatively new, and it was my first gift of that size. Oh. And when that I solicited and received, and when I was speaking to a board member, he said to me, yeah, the first $1 million is always the hardest. So, and thank God we have gotten more since then. But anyway, they have been amazing partners, and they started by saying, we see that you want to invest in your alumni, so we would like you to take some of that money to create a fellowship to spur innovation amongst your alumni. So we called this the Zakkai Fellowship because Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, I think this speaks a lot about who we're about, was at the time of the destruction of the temple. And he realized that we could not look backwards, that Judaism had to be anchored in the past, but it had to address the challenges of today. And he switched the focus from the temple to Torah. And the goal of this is to encourage and spur our rabbis to be innovators, to see the new challenges, and to authentic one anchored in the past but responding to the present.
So final question, Rabbi Linzer, we're on the eve of Pesach, and you wrote a year ago, you encouraged us to ask a question about narrative. As Jews and as citizens of the world, what is the story that we tell? Where is the Torah and our humanity pointing us? What is the ending that we see in the horizon, and how can we play our role in moving towards it? So,
wow, that was well written.
Humility has always been your strength. So if you can kind of riff on your own Torah and leave us with a thought on YCT with this frame.
So I think that actually fits very well with the figure of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. When things are changing, do you keep on looking in the backwards, or do you see what we must do to move forwards? If you think about the Pesach narrative, it can end with going out of Egypt. Some people will end it at standing at Mount Sinai. We received the Torah. What more do we need? But of course, the narrative ends by taking the Torah and entering into the promised land. What are you going to do with that Torah? What is the arc? Where's the end goal? And I think that that's what we're about, that we see that to be rabbis and religious leaders in today's world, you have to have an arc that starts in the past and that responds really to the realities of where people are and the challenges of the present and the challenges of the future.
Thank you. Thank you, President. And thank you all.
Wow. I want more of that. I'd like to take a moment to thank some people behind the scenes who have been incredibly helpful getting us to tonight. Ruthie already mentioned our amazing YCT staff, our faculty, everyone else. I will riff here for a moment, and I haven't done that tonight, and thank Ruthie. This is where you clap. for today and for every day, really. Special thank you to David Chabinski and your staff, to Avi Bloom, to Esther, who's doing our closed captioning tonight, to Bram, who's doing our ASL interpretation right here live with us. And really a thank you to all of you at home for joining us tonight, or I was going to say tomorrow, or this morning if you were in Japan. If you were inspired tonight, and I know that you were, please keep engaging with us. Learn our Torah. There are so many ways to do that. The WhatsApp, the Facebook, the email, the website, you name it, we got it. Come and learn in our baby drash here in Riverdale. Encourage your youngsters to engage with Torah and to become Jewish leaders and rabbis and YCT rabbis.
Nice.
And when you need a rabbi, call us. HaChodesh Hazel Lachem. This is a new month, a new time of renewal, of rebirth for the Jewish people and for YCT, and we are part of it and we are in it. As we look forward to Pesach and we celebrate Zman Cherutenu, a time of freedom of choice, to engage with our tradition and to bring our Torah to the world, I wish each and every one of us a mazel tov on our accomplishments heretofore, and wish us all a blessing, a bracha moving forward, that we continue to grow higher and higher in our endeavors here at YCT, with an impact heard, felt, and most of all, beloved around the world. Thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to see you again soon. Laila Tov and Boker Tov.
רחמך וימיכם, כי לא תמו חסדיך, כי מעולם, כי מעולם, כי מעולם קיווינו לך. הטוב, 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 כי לא חלו רחמך וימיכם, כי לא תמו חסדיך, כי מעולם, כי מעולם, כי מעולם קיווינו לך. הטוב, 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 כי לא חלו רחמך וימיכם, כי לא תמו חסדיך, כי מעולם, כי מעולם, כי מעולם קיווינו לך. הטוב, 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 כי לא חלו רחמך וימיכם, כי לא תמו חסדיך, כי מעולם, כי מעולם, כי מעולם קיווינו לך. כי מעולם קיווינו לך. הטוב, 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 כי לא חלו רחמך וימיכם, כי לא תמו חסדיך, כי מעולם, כי מעולם, כי מעולם קיווינו לך. הטוב, 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 כי לא חלו רחמך וימיכם, כי לא תמו חסדיך, כי מעולם, כי מעולם, כי מעולם קיווינו לך. טוב, הטוב, הטוב, כי לא חלו רחמך וימיכם, כי לא תמו חסדיך, כי מעולם, כי מעולם, כי מעולם